Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of Barnard College and Women in Hollywood, I am so excited to welcome you to the 11th Annual Athena Film Festival. The Athena Film Festival is dedicated to celebrating stories of bold, courageous women leaders and the filmmakers who bring these stories to life. So thank you very much for joining us. My name is Corey Luco, and I am a programmer and operations assistant at the festival. This year's festival would, of course, not be possible without our dedicated sponsors. So please take this moment and join me in thanking Athena's founding sponsor, the Artemis Rising Foundation, and its CEO and founder, Regina K. Scully, whose visionary leadership is what makes this festival possible. So also please join me in thanking our premier level sponsor, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, who shares our commitment to showcasing stories of women in science on screen. To all of our sponsors, whose names you will see before each film and event, thank you for your commitment to challenging our culture to be more inclusive and including audiences and inspiring our audiences in the process. So this past year has, of course, been a wake-up call in many ways. And when we were looking to program for this year's festival, we wanted to dig deeper in our programming. So we thought about 8 program areas that we thought really responded and reacted to these past 12 months. And the shorts program that you've all just watched was our Resilience Through Uncertainty program. And in this program, we asked the question, what does resilience look like? How do we move through the fog of uncertainty and come out the other side? And then through films and conversations, we investigate and showcase the exhaustion and devastation, and then also the powerful manifestations of perseverance and hope that keeps people going. And so I'm very excited to welcome all of our filmmakers and who have all made films that we thought really embodied this topic. And I'm excited to get started talking with everyone. So I'm just going to have everybody introduce themselves. So Leonor, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Leonor, the director, cinematographer, and producer of the film Exile.
Amazing. Yuan?
Hi everyone, I'm Yuan Yuan. I'm the writer, director, producer, and editor of Heading South.
Amazing. Dana?
Hi everyone, my name is Dana, and I'm the director, producer, and editor for Miss Diva Trucker.
Very cool. Liz?
Hi, I'm Liz Sargent, and I am the writer-director for Strangers Reunion.
Very cool. And Kristen?
Hello, everybody. I'm Kristen Lapis. I'm the co-director, writer, and producer of Blackfeet Boxing Not Invisible.
Amazing. So, like I said, we're so excited to have y'all here. And I wanted to just start us off with a question for each of you to really talk us through how you came to your story, why you wanted to tell this story, and then a little bit about how it came to be. So, Leonor, do you want to start?
Sure. My film is about the Nicaraguan's president's daughter that decided to accuse the president of raping her when she was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew about this subject all my life because she did this accusation when I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
13 years old. But then I didn't pay attention to much of that. But then with time, I really want to explore what happened with my friends. I mean, I have 10 friends in front of me, female friends, and 7 of them could tell me that they suffered some type of sexual abuse when they were kids. And some of them were talking that this happened in the family. So for me, it was shocking. I was always, I didn't understand why this happened in the family, and also why they continue having a relationship. The family continue having a relationship with the abuser, even when they know what happened.
Right.
So, but any of my friends didn't want to talk about this, and I remember the story of Soy America, and I remember no one did a documentary about this. So I talked with her, and through her, I explored this subject that I honestly have been thinking for years.
Yeah. This is the first time that I have seen anything in depth about her. So that it was really incredible to watch your film. Thank you so much for bringing this story to us. Hyunwon, you want to talk a little bit about how you came to Heading South, which is a narrative film?
Yeah, thank you. So Heading South is a film about a Chinese Mongolian girl live on the Mongolian steppe, travels to the city nearby to visit her father who has been moved there for work, and then meet her new mom there.
Yeah.
This story is based on my real experience when I was 5 years old, but I wasn't born in Mongolia. I was born in Wuhan, and I was imagining to shoot this short film back in my hometown. But however, all the old town now has been teared down and built a lot of new buildings. And so Mongolian came to my mind because it is like my second hometown. I used to work as AD for a Mongolian director for years before I came to study in NYU. So naturally, I adapted my story there and revisit the script with my friends there, just to make sure it landed there. So yeah, that's how the story came together, and with the help in our screenwriting class. A lot of my friends, professors give me a lot of feedbacks, and I find out one thing interesting is that I thought nobody understand the Mongolian culture, but actually it seems everybody in my class understand the story perfectly. Yeah, I'm very surprised. Yeah, thank you.
That's wonderful. Dana, do you want to talk us a little bit about how you met Miss Diva?
Sure. Miss Diva, Miss Diva Trucker 43 is the YouTube handle for this incredible woman, Tamara Brock, that I met at GATS, the Great American Trucking Show. And I honestly went there looking for a nonfiction documentary story. I was mostly I was interested in speaking to women who work in the trucking industry because I am very drawn to stories about the relationship between women and work and the unique struggles that women encounter in certain workplaces. I learned a pretty surprising statistic, which is that 96% of the workforce in the trucking industry is cis male. And I was interested in knowing how these communities of women network and sort of leverage resources and create community in such an isolating job. They spend so much time on the road, completely alone, it seemed to me. But Tamara is someone who she came into the trucking industry seeking financial autonomy, and she has created a career and is a leader in an organization that fights for equal rights for women in the trucking industry. So she's really found her voice and friends and an incredible community that she didn't have before she went into it. And I unfortunately only got to film with her a little bit before COVID hit. But fortunately, a lot of the material in my film comes from her own YouTube channel. She's had years of diary entries. So a lot of the material is
her content
evergreen.
Is so incredible. My gosh. When I saw this film, I thought about it so much for this program because I was, she just shares so much with her audience, and it's like the way that she is able to open up and bring people along with her is really incredible. Yeah, thank you. So Liz, how did you find your way to Strangers Reunion, which is our other narrative film here?
Let's see, about 6 months before I wrote the script, I had found my biological mother. I was searching for her on a whim, sort of just because I was bored and I was at the age where I knew it was the last chance. And amazingly, I found her in about a month and found out I had 3 siblings. And I was totally caught off guard, unprepared for what I even wanted from her, because many times these searches can go on for years and years, they're unresolved, or you find out negative information. And I had no idea what was on the other end, but I was mainly, they were so welcoming and so excited to find me. And I wasn't even sure if I felt joy or fear or anger or sadness, and everything just sort of, hit me at once. And I was prompted by a film competition to write a script for two people in a hotel room in a country somewhere in the world for the Ritz-Carlton and with Hearst magazine. And I sort of just channeled this relationship of the daughter and the mother being in this room and what they would say without a translator. And what you could understand and what felt like nature and what you would say if you knew the other person couldn't understand you, but what might be healing. So I wrote that and somehow I won it, which is the craziest thing I could have imagined in my life. And I went to Hong Kong to shoot it. And immediately afterwards, I met my biological mother for the first time.
Wow.
And so it was a lot. And then actually, after I met her, then I did the edit. And so the whole thing, I think I was talking to someone today about how filming it and watching these scenes unfold, which some of the dialogue was from letters that I had received from her through translation, was very therapeutic. And I think doing the edit afterwards and choosing the moments and performances from the actors felt very healing. And so.
Wow, that's an incredible story. And I really feel in your film, that sort of just rush of all of these emotions kind of coming out all at once, So we'll definitely talk more about that. But Kristen, how did you come to Blackfeet Boxing, Not Invisible?
Well, first of all, I love hearing all these fascinating stories about how everybody's projects came to fruition. As we all know, as storytellers, they don't come in the easiest ways. They don't always come the same ways. They kind of, happen out of a lot of different scenarios. So I've been with ESPN, the sports film department, for 12 years now. And I kind of dedicated my entire career to finding stories about how sports empower young women. And that's what kind of led me to Blackfeet. I was reading an article in a small newspaper in Montana, and there was a statistic that said, while there are missing person statistics for every other demographic, none exist for Native American women, and no one knows how many are missing. And it was so chilling to read that. I honestly didn't know very much about the MMIW, Missing Murdered Indigenous Women epidemic at that point. But later in the article, there was an image of Frank Kipp training young women in self-defense at his boxing club. And I was like, wow, here's this next generation of women that's trying to combat this issue in the boxing ring. And it just felt like a perfect fit for ESPN to go and tell the story. So I was on a plane about a week later and filmed with the girls for over a year. So it was a long process. Wow. Yeah. But that's kind of how I came to learning about the gym.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about, because three of the films, Exiled, Heading South, and Strangers Reunion, I think so much is told in the unsaid in the films and in sort of the quietness of, either the characters or the surrounding area. And Leonor, I loved what you had in the film. You had, this really empowering contrast between, her being incredibly vocal and speaking up and speaking her truth, but then these quiet moments with her at home, just sort of waiting to see what happened. So I'd be interested to hear from y'all about how you captured that and why you wanted to write it that way, or Leonor, why you wanted it to be presented that way.
Actually, that was something very important for me, because this is a story that is well known in Nicaragua.
Mm-hmm.
The president is Daniel Ortega, which is the leader of the Sandinistas that were really, really in the media in the 80s. So her decision of accusing the president was huge, maybe the biggest political scandal in that decade in Nicaragua.
Yeah.
So for that reason, all the media tend to objectify her,
Mm-hmm.
treat her in certain way. She always tells me, for the media, I'm kind of the staying in the biography of Daniel Ortega. I'm not a person, you know.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was really, really important because no one has made a documentary about her. A lot of news, but not a documentary, because
Right.
it's very dangerous to do this in Nicaragua. So for me, it was really important to provide a completely different perspective of her.
Yeah.
Me, the perspective that I was going to bring is to treat her like a human, you know, treat her as a integral human being, a person that is not this billion, you know, against Ortega, but is also not a full victim that is crying all the time in her house, you know.
Yeah.
She deals with her son. She teaches in university. She is a person.
Yeah.
So to me, that was really important. That's the reason I took the decision that like 90% of the film is filmed inside of her house.
Yeah.
And for me, that was beautiful because one of the surprises that I wasn't expecting is the fact that her kid became such an important character in the film. You know,
Yeah.
of her just being a mom, which I think for her is her biggest success, you know, coming from a family that didn't believe in her, but creating her own family in which she can openly talk with her kid about sexual abuse. That was for me the takeaway of that process.
Yeah. And you really feel so much power in those moments with her in her house, which is why we really thought about it, you know, for specifically this program, and also just because she's such an incredible, resilient woman. So thank you. It was really beautiful to see that on screen.
Thank you.
Liz and Juan, do either of you want to speak a little bit to that? You know, like in the what is in the unsaid, especially in a narrative context.
I'm happy to jump. Oh, do you want to go ahead?
You go first.
Okay.
Everyone will get to everybody.
I guess I was just curious about language, and how and how if you can't understand that, what you interpret, I guess, in the way somebody, you know, in your presence with them. And the silence, I think, in the space in my piece was also sort of about trying to capture the tension. And I was also trying to go for this idea that I think that as humans, we don't actually always want to express everything we're feeling. And so I guess I'm not articulating it perfectly, but
I understand what you're saying. Just that, you know, because that's what I felt so much, and what the programming teams felt so much in your film is that, you know, it's this kind of experience where it almost feels like there's so many things that you're feeling, and there's so much to be said that nothing can fully like express it, except for just sort of the being between the characters. And I think that it comes off, you know, I think it comes off so beautifully in the film. And it makes and now makes sense, a lot of the, you know, hearing the backstory and hearing how you were making this film as you were almost living this same experience. You know, when you looked for your birth mother and then you shot it and then you met her and then you edited. And so how integral this all was into what was going on right then. But yeah, I think that's great. Hyun-Yuan?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Liz said. That I totally agree with her, especially with the different languages. I feel me as a foreigner here, there was definitely moments that there was this awkward silence between conversations, which I feel I value most. And I feel for the character, it depends on what kind of situation they're in. The silence between conversation reflect who they are, where they came from in a conversation with different people. And I did design for the silence part because I'm a big fan of the neo Italian realist movies, those old movies. I'm a big fan of movies that that would makes me feel similar to what real people would say or would do in a real sense of time, instead of by cutting. But I find it really difficult with film involved with child actors, because usually they couldn't act that long in one shot. So I ended up cutting, but my design was to make it as real as possible, but it's really challenging.
I think you definitely feel that realness though in the film. Absolutely. And so Kristen and Dana, I wanted to go to you to talk a little bit about community building. And because I think that there's such a strong, like there's so much strong community building in both of these films, and sort of how the subjects of the film, how you saw that expressed while talking to the subjects of the film, and how then you saw that in like the larger community that they were in.
Yeah, the Blackfeet Indian Reservation in Browning, Montana, only has 16,000 people in the community, and the space is almost, it's actually larger than the state of Rhode Island is like their reservation. So it's a huge, massive plot of land, but there's only 16,000 people in the community. So when Ashley went missing, it truly impacted every single person on the reservation. And that was something that we always felt was really important to capture, was how it's affecting her peers in the high school, how it's affecting the young girls who looked up to her, how it's affecting her family, her friends, the police force. Every single person was touched by her disappearance. And obviously that's what led a lot of the girls to joining the gym and joining that community, because they felt a sense of belonging and a safe place that they could go and learn how to be empowered by Frank and the other trainers. And so, yeah, community was so important. And in addition to that, because it's such a tight-knit community, their distrust of outsiders is a real thing. And so, when the first 2 trips we made to the reservation, we did not bring cameras. People were very skeptical to open, their houses to us and hear us out for what our vision was for this film. It would take a lot of trust building over, and that's why we shot for over a year, because, we wanted to make sure that we established that, in the first couple of months, so that when we were sitting down and people were sharing these really tragic and heartbreaking pieces of their lives, there was already that trust established. And that's kind of how we went about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Indigenous communities' distrust of the white man is completely, obviously historically valid in so many ways. So, coming into a small community like that, there's a lot to unpack for sure. Dana, what about you?
I was just thinking about there was a difficulty for me in trying to visualize this online community. This is sort of very strong group of people who are, connecting via, like Tamara, when she's driving, has her headset and she's taking phone calls the entire trip. Like, she's really not alone, and she's posting multiple times a day, but it's still very difficult, I think, to tell sort of a story of virtual community. So that was a challenge for the filmmaking perspective. But she definitely, I think the community of women who are in trucking is really felt through the fact that I only drove with her for, 36 hours. And we ran into 2 people who knew her in East Station, who recognized her from YouTube. And I think, we covered hundreds of miles during that trip. So I think it's pretty impressive, actually, how in some ways very small the world is, despite being such an enormous workforce in terms of numbers. I think, I don't know, I think one of the other things that's really interesting about this community of women is that they're sort of responsible for also what you're talking about, like a new generation, leaving the industry and leaving this community better and stronger than you found it. I think that's really the goal of a lot of Tamara and a lot of these women who've been in trucking for, decades. It's being marketed towards a certain demographic, a very vulnerable demographic. It's kind of viewed as a not get rich quick, but most women that I spoke to who were in the industry got into it because they saw an ad either on TV or in the paper or something like that that sort of misrepresents exactly what the journey looks like and what to expect once they get in it. And so I think Tamara and a lot of women feel responsible for providing resources to help women make it work for them, because there are so many pitfalls and ways of becoming even further indebted to your truck company if you're sort of if you don't have access to this wealth of information that these women have. So it is a very tight-knit community looking after each other and trying to make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have time for one more question for everyone, and I really wanted to ask folks, how do you see resilience in in your films, and like how, just we know where we see it, but I would just love to hear from you, because I just think that it's so it comes through so powerfully on screen. So if folks want to speak to that.
I could say something quickly.
Yeah, go for it.
I was really focusing on the industry and this like macro level analysis of what's going on in the film and what's so interesting about the resilience of women in trucking. But I just wanted to speak to Tamara's resilience as an individual. I was really drawn to her because she's such a confident woman who has really faced a lot of, obstacles in her life, some, like personal and otherwise. And she, I think, her vulnerability with her audience and also her intense resolve to never give up and just continue pushing forward, I think she provides a path forward for other women in the industry, but just women in general who are suffering, from racial or sexual discrimination, sexual abuse. She is just very open and vulnerable about the things that she's overcome. And as an individual, she's just an incredibly resilient person.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in the case of my story of exile, I think one of the things that women that make accusations against rapers, of sexual abusers, have always had to deal with this thing of fighting the system to be able to achieve some justice. And this is the example of Soy La America. She's fighting the most powerful man in Nicaragua. But and everybody told her, don't say it, don't do it, retract yourself, go back. Don't.
Yeah.
I think her resilience starts with the fact that in more than 20 years, she never has backed with her truth.
Yeah.
She always says, he did it, and this is the truth, even if you don't want to hear it. I think that is the first step of her resilience. But the other part of her resilience, which I hope it comes across in the film, is the fact that she also finds joy and happiness in her life.
Yeah.
I remember we talk about this because her story is very difficult. It's not an easy story, and it's not like a happy ending, textbook happy ending,
I know.
She still struggles with this. She hasn't achieved any justice. She lives in exile, but I can see also like her biggest symbol of resilience is the fact that she finds happiness in her life. That I wake up and I find that telling the truth, even if I had to overcome all this, it set me free in a way that I wasn't.
Yeah.
And also the fact that she can have a different relationship with her own kids, which love her, makes her very proud, coming from a very difficult family to be able to achieve this. I think her bigger, symbol of resilience.
Yeah. I think that joy definitely comes through in the film for sure.
Yes, I'll go first. So, make it short. Nice with my film. I definitely want to visualize the resilient part, but I feel I prefer to leave it unsolved. That's why the ending was like she riding the horse, um, because throughout the film the the struggles about the Mongolian people in China, I felt similar with other people of indigenous,
Mhm.
what they're suffering similar all over the world. That when their communities facing the big urbanization, uh, other rulers they may have, um, their tradition, the way they live their old nomadic lives totally changed. So throughout the film, I tried to show uh, on her way to the city that we see how the grassland changed without the fences, without the highways. And when she entered the city, we see all the chimneys of the huge factory, the pollutions. And inside the city is a totally new world with industrial color everywhere, gray and blue. So I felt even though she didn't have the ability to fight because she's just 8 years old, but I'm sure, I hope the audience could fight in their own heart, but there's no solution. Yeah, for sure, I feel.
Yeah.
I'll follow that because I like the idea of unresolved, and I feel like I wanted my ending to feel unresolved because I think that there's something problematic in solving things for audiences, especially when there's such difficult situations. And I think, specifically for adoption and reunion, it's an ongoing relationship and struggle and realization. And all I've seen are adoption narratives that are sort of, fulfilling and changing and fixing. And I think the resilience can easily be seen maybe in the obvious ways of adoption, trauma, rejection, or something like that. But I sort of feel like the resilience of this is just facing these emotionally difficult situations and knowing you'll survive them.
Yeah.
And I think that simple small thing is something that people have a hard time doing in life, facing their actual emotional relationships. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, in our film, we tried to tell two different stories that were deeply connected, right? We were telling the story of Ashley's family trying to seek justice for her disappearance, and then we were also telling the story of the girls at the gym who were motivated by Ashley in order to learn how to defend themselves and to learn how to, gain that confidence in the ring. And I feel like both of those storylines kind of exemplified a different type of resilience.
Yeah.
With Kimberly, Kimberly was a very, very shy woman. She had a really bad stuttering problem. She didn't like public speaking. And through her sister's disappearance and her wanting to seek justice and to promote change to help the other families that were going through this, she basically found her voice. And, seeing her testify in DC at the end of the film, it made me feel so many different things because it was like, here's this woman who, is the ultimate example of resiliency, right? Like she put her own fears aside in order to try to, seek justice for her sister. And then you have the girls in the gym as young as 4 and 5 years old who are literally like putting gloves on, hitting heavy bags. And in that they're gaining the confidence to go out and to protect themselves, to have a voice. Like the one thing that we heard over and over on the reservation is like, girls in our community are taught to be subservient. They're taught to be quiet, to be shy. And then like you go into the gym and you see this like totally different image of just like, these badasses, right? Like it was just so refreshing, and it made me feel hopeful for the next generation of young women. So it's definitely a theme, obviously, in all of our films, and it's so nice to hear about how everybody else's stories unfolded, and I can't wait to see everybody's films.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to watching your movies.
This has been an incredible conversation, and thank you all so much for taking the time to talk with me about your films. And I'm excited for everybody to see everybody's film, and for the audience to be able to, really feel these stories. So thank you all so much for joining me, and it was great speaking with you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah.
Thank you.